analyzing the outfits in The Parent Trap. The 1990s were a huge time for twins. Just look at the Olsens, the Mauries, and the Daniels, and a bunch of movies and TV shows wound up incorporating twins into their storylines throughout the decade, one of them being The Parent Trap, a remake of the 1961 film, which was itself based on the 1942 children's novel Lisa and Lottie. Part rom-com, part family drama, The Parent Trap was the world's first introduction to Lindsay Lohan, who played the dual roles of Hallie Parker and Annie James, a pair of twins who were separated at birth by their parents. Try not to think too hard about that bizarre custody arrangement. Only 11 years old at the time of filming, Lohan's performance drew critical acclaim, and for a hot minute, a lot of people, including myself, genuinely thought that she had a twin. Today I'm going to be discussing the amazing fashion choices of the female characters in The Parent Trap, mainly Hallie Parker, Annie James, Elizabeth James, and Meredith Blake. I'll be exploring the real-life trends and pop culture figures that served as points of reference, as well as how the costuming choices relate to the story and the characters' personalities. Although my summer isn't going to be quite as action-packed as Hallie and Annie's, thanks to today's sponsor, ThredUp, I can make sure that I'm prepared for any occasion, whether it's traveling to a different country or hanging out at home. ThredUp is an online consignment store that makes secondhand shopping easy, affordable, and sustainable, so you can feel good about looking good. Because they literally have thousands of items, browsing can be a little intimidating. But there are a bunch of search filters that'll help you find the exact brand or color that you're looking for. They also have an awesome image search feature that gives you recommendations based on whatever picture you've uploaded, which helped me find this amazing tweed blazer from Alberto Macaulay. And the best thing about it is that it was only $74.99 off of its estimated retail price of $382. And to make it a full fit, I also paired it with these amazing pumps from Calvin Klein, which were only $29.99 off of their estimated retail price of $119. And of course, I had to get this matching bag from Kenneth Cole, which was $69.99. Summer is wedding season, and ThredUp is a great place to shop for those kinds of occasions, as evidenced by the fact that I've worn 2 of my ThredUp purchases to different weddings, and they won't be the last. I'm a sucker for a comfy dress, and this one from Jam's World was only $96.74 off of its estimated retail price of $178. And I just love that I can dress it up or down, like with these wedges that I got for $23.99 and this purse that I got for $62.39. So if you're looking for some summer wardrobe staples that won't break the bank, head on over to ThredUp today. Just click the link in the description or use my code MODERN50 for 50% off your first order, plus free shipping. Now let's get back to the video. When Hallie arrives at camp, she's wearing what I would consider a quintessential 90s tween outfit consisting of sneakers, shorts, a t-shirt, and a jean jacket. As you can see from the other kids in the background, it's a look that's on trend but not trying too hard. Not to mention, it looks comfortable enough for the plane ride there. Thanks to the grunge movement and their penchant for flannel shirts, plaid had trickled into the mainstream fashion market, with more colorful iterations of the print becoming popular in youth attire, and you can see the trend reflected in Hallie's shorts as a way of highlighting her more laid-back nature. What makes the look a bit more polished and put together are the accessories like her hair tie and backpack, which mirror the green and blue tones of the overall outfit, not to mention her sunglasses, which tie into her whole effortless California girl vibe. Annie, on the other hand, looks significantly more dressed up. And since this is her first time away from home, her more grown-up outfit makes a lot of sense. It's as if she's playing the part of an adult who can be on their own for the summer. The two-tone flats, plaid suit set, and matching luggage shows how collected and organized she is, in addition to her wealth. According to Lindsay Lohan, she was actually wearing a custom Chanel suit. And while I think that would make perfect sense for the character, considering her mother is a fashion designer, I personally question the authenticity of that claim. At the time, Karl Lagerfeld wasn't really designing ensembles with that sort of silhouette, and while the suit's plaid pattern does evoke Chanel, it isn't made from the brand's signature boucle fabric. With that in mind, I think it's more likely that costume designer Penny Rose made a custom garment that was simply meant to resemble Chanel. And while the silhouette and color palette of each twin's outfit is pretty different, I like that the plaid ties them together as a unit. As a kid, I never got to go to camp, unless you count the one year I went to clown camp for a week and still slept at home every night, but I distinctly remember watching The Parent Trap and dreaming of log cabins and mess halls and kayaking on a lake. Camp Walden's official colors seem to be green and white, a classic woodsy palette, and I just love how lived in and real everything feels. It's a girls' camp, and the movie leans into that, with the extras gossiping, playing Mary Mac, and reading magazines. Sure, Hallie and Allie are the main characters, but if we were dropped into the lives of any of the extras, it would still be an entertaining summer romp. One of my favorite things about the movie is how Penny Rose took the time to create distinct looks for the side characters and extras, highlighting personalities and backstories that serve no purpose to the main story other than making it look more realistic. Even though there does seem to be an official Camp Walden uniform that the girls are required to wear, we still get a lot of variety, which you can see in the moments where the campers are all together. They didn't dress every single extra the same and then give Hallie and Annie the only unique outfits. Some opt for sweats, others shorts. Some wear their hair up with colorful scrunchies, others down in braids. Even all of their shoes are different. It's a really nice touch. Take for instance Nicole, better known as Tie-Dye Girl. While the film establishes that she's an athletic type, as evidenced by her helping Hallie get her bag and literally giving her a piggyback ride, we can also infer that she has a slightly more hippy-dippy upbringing thanks to the patches on her backpack, beads in her hair, Birkenstock sandals, braided accessories, and of course, her tie-dye shirt. Whereas Zoe is a little more of a bookworm with her glasses, bangs, and ribbed sweatshirts. Side note, she looks like what I'd always imagined Molly McIntyre from American Girl looking like, and if I had a time machine, I'd make that movie. Hollywood loves to focus on the whole clique thing, but The Parent Trap captures the very real childhood summer vacation experience of making friends with people you might not have hung out with during the school year. And I really appreciate that both Hallie and Annie's friends aren't exact copies of them. Also, did you know that Kat Graham, aka Bonnie in The Vampire Diaries, made her film debut as one of Annie's camp friends? Annie's other friend is played by Hallie Myers Shire, the daughter of the film's director Nancy Myers and producer Charles Shire, and she and her sister Annie were actually the inspiration for the characters' names. Even though they look identical, Hallie and Annie wear their camp attire in vastly different ways that are representative of their individual personalities. Annie goes in a more modest, prim and proper direction with coordinating sweatpants and crew necks, as well as polos and headbands. Her long hair is usually pulled back, reading as a bit more feminine and prissy. Hallie opts for a more down-to-earth Americana look with ringer tees, hoodies, and pigtails. While both girls are outdoorsy and athletic, we can see that Hallie has more of an interest in it, playing basketball, excelling at fencing, and even being on the hockey team back at home. Considering how these activities are often coded as more masculine, I love the juxtaposition of her girls' rule baseball cap, since it makes it clear that she's multifaceted, much like real kids are. And as we all know, girls rule and boys drool. Considering how macho her dad is, Hallie's penchant for sports and more boyish clothing might be because of his influence in her life. I mean, his nickname for her, Hal, is literally a boy's name. Even when they're relinquished from the camp uniform at bedtime, Annie's clothing is more formal, often wearing nightgowns or pajama sets with dainty floral prints and pastel accents. Meanwhile, Hallie opts for more casual bottoms and oversized t-shirts, and part of me wonders if she took some of them from Nick's closet for a piece of home while she's away. One of Hallie's more memorable camp looks is the green varsity jacket that she wears while playing poker, which besides being a classic part of American sportswear, was also quite trendy throughout the 1980s and 1990s, being worn by athletes, models, and rappers. One little detail that I love are her nails, which Lindsay Lohan insisted had to be painted with hard candy polish, a brand that had quickly become a tween and teen favorite after its launch in 1995, when it was spotted on several stylish celebrities including Alicia Silverstone, Dennis Rodman, Madonna, and Winona Ryder. Hard candy was known for having a rather unusual shade range, which included bubblegum pink, radioactive green, and frigid blue, which is actually what Hallie wears in the movie. The color choice makes her come across as not only in the know when it comes to fashion trends, something that actually relates to her mother's profession, but also makes her a bit more edgy, especially when compared to Annie's clean-cut look. And I love the little detail of her earrings being the same shade of blue. The film itself acknowledges how popular hard candy polishes were by having the girls literally use them as currency while playing poker, in addition to a few other 90s staples like claw clips, sunglasses, mood lipsticks, and scrunchies. The only other things they needed were tattoo chokers, airheads, and bottled Emotions perfume. Then it would have been a real 90s smorgasbord. After a series of escalating pranks, the twins are sent to the camp's isolation cabin, which is a much less torturous experience than in the Addams Family Values. Once they realize they're related and decide to switch places, we even see them briefly start to wear the others' camp clothing, with Hallie sporting headbands and Annie using her hoodie. It's very cute. And after cutting Annie's hair, we get our first look at them truly matching. Hallie heads to England to reunite with their mother, and lucky her, she gets to fly first class. She's wearing the same suit set that Annie was introduced in at the beginning of the movie, but with Hallie's shorter hair and her more bouncy, slightly nervous energy, she does feel like a different person, which is just phenomenal acting on Lindsay Lohan's part. I don't know where the girls got their hands on pearl earrings for Hallie to use, but it's a brilliant addition, since it not only ties into the more formal British environment, but also makes her match with Elizabeth, who has a penchant for pearls herself, and their reunion is just so sweet. Hallie changes into a powder blue suit for their visit to Elizabeth's atelier, and I think the outfit is a great representation of her faux persona and her true self. On one hand, it's formal and put together in a way that we've come to associate with Annie, but with pants instead of a skirt, it has the slightly masculine edge we've seen Hallie gravitate towards, not to mention a color palette we've already seen her wear. When Annie gets to Napa and meets Meredith, she's wearing an oversized Parker Knoll t-shirt, and the fact that she's literally wearing her father's name is no coincidence. She's staking her claim on him, declaring that she belongs here. She's family. Meredith is the outsider who doesn't belong. I also think it's a nice touch that Annie felt the need to wear a cover-up around the house. Hallie would have probably just walked around in nothing but the swimsuit. After all, why dress up when the pool is right in your backyard? I also think the choice of it being a Speedo swimsuit is perfect, since it references both Hallie and Nick's athleticism. When the girls call each other to catch up, we see Annie wearing another Hallie-esque look, repeating her cloud print bottoms from camp and her hockey team t-shirt. The more elaborate hairdo is similar to how Hallie styled her hair during poker, and you can see that Annie isn't totally comfortable considering how much she fusses with it. I couldn't get a good look at Hallie's full outfit, but it looks like she's wearing a collared PJ set under a pink housecoat. With all of the pink and bows, it's very girly and formal, a much more appropriate choice for a family with a butler that does sit-down breakfasts. The next day, Annie dons a very cowboy-esque outfit with blue jeans, a white tee, and a flannel shirt, which is perfect for running around the winery and riding horses. And notice the Ralph Lauren logo? It's very Americana. The outfit is very reminiscent of what Nick and Chessie are wearing, making them look like three peas in a pod, further highlighting how Meredith doesn't fit in with the rest of the family. The fact that Annie's outfits aren't really reflective of her own personality, but Hallie's, highlights how her experience in California isn't going as well as her sister's in London. She hasn't quite found her footing yet. At dinner, Hallie wears another outfit that's a bit of her and a bit of Annie, and there's even some overlap with other members of their British family, like Elizabeth's cardigans and grandfather's plaid blazers. Even though it's rather monochromatic, I like how they played with textures and patterns, which makes the outfit interesting to look at, even if it's devoid of color. Her jacket is from Burberry, a very British brand, and at the time it was considered a symbol of the upper crust, even being worn by members of the royal family. Of course, that fancy association eventually dwindled in the 2000s thanks to logo mania. When Hallie finally confesses her true identity, she's in a frilly nightgown, but carrying Cuppy for moral support, the only piece of home that she has. Desperate for her mother's love and acceptance, she's not only matching with Elizabeth, but is dressed as her real daughter. But of course, there was nothing for her to worry about since Elizabeth is an angel. On their way to California, Hallie changes into an all-yellow ensemble that happens to match what Annie is wearing. Whether or not they planned that on purpose, I have no idea. But I'd love it if it was just twin telepathy. It's still pretty girly compared to what Hallie usually wears, but it actually reminds me a bit of her original camp outfit, at least with the layers and plaid. And I love that she has a matching backpack and purse. A girl's got to have her accessories. Annie, on the other hand, is wearing a white jacket and pants, which is more masculine than her usual style. I think it's so sweet that when Elizabeth bumps into her, not realizing that it is her, that she takes a moment to compliment her look. It's not only a great moment for Elizabeth, she's a fashion designer after all, she'd notice clothing even when she's drunk, but it also shows how they're all a like-minded unit. With the more neutral color palette, it also reminds me of what Annie wore to camp, just not quite as formal since she's working with her sister's closet. We never get a really good look at them, but throughout the film, the girls are wearing watches which are representative of their differing personalities and style philosophies. Annie wears a more classic silver tone metal watch, like something that she might have received from an older family member. It's not only elegant, but rigid and stiff, which is also how I'd describe her personality, whereas Hallie wears a watch with a brown leather band, which is a little more down to earth and casual. Another brilliant detail is that each girl's watch matches the one worn by the parent they've been kept away from, as if they were looking for something that was missing. With the cat out of the bag, the girls switch back, finally wearing their own clothing. Annie wears a blue fit and flare dress with white accents, and it's utterly adorable, with a slight retro vibe that feels true to her. Meanwhile, Hallie, always the hip and trendy kid, is wearing a Cheongsam-inspired dress with pink jelly sandals and a feathered bag. In the 1990s, China was in a period of massive economic growth, which resulted in renewed interest in Chinese culture abroad, which eventually trickled into the fashion space. This led to motifs like mandarin collars, frog closures, and chinoiserie prints becoming mainstream trends in the West, and a variety of celebrities donned similar dresses throughout the decade and well into the 2000s. In protest of their parents' plan to separate them again, the girls start dressing in similar styles to confuse them. The base of the outfit is more Hallie with the jeans and oversized button-downs, but the pastels and headbands are more Annie. We're not supposed to know which is which, but if I had to make a guess, I think the one in pink might be Hallie, only because it isn't quite as matchy-matchy.
She is very hip. She's more like me.
When the family goes camping, the girls continue to dress in prototypical twin attire. You can tell that unlike Meredith, they actually prepared for this adventure, wearing sturdy hiking boots, jeans, t-shirts, coats, and giant backpacks. The silhouette is similar to what Nick is wearing, once again highlighting their connection, while leaving Meredith the odd woman out. This point is even more obvious the next morning, when Meredith forces Nick to pick between her and the twins, with the three of them wearing white, the color of new beginnings. You can tell that Nick doesn't really care about the breakup, and his camaraderie with the girls is further highlighted on their way home when they're all wearing the same Henley jean and boot combo. The girls later wear the winery's branded t-shirts, with Hallie getting back her blue one, while Annie gets her own in pink. It's a great way of showing how they might have their similarities, but they're still their own person, and more importantly, they're a family. When Annie heads back to England, it looks like Hallie has rubbed off on her a bit, still looking prim and proper, but slightly more relaxed. Hallie is in her usual cowboy attire, but it's a lot more subdued than we're used to, without any interesting colors or patterns. She's in mourning. When she gets to England, she's back to having fun, wearing a blue suede trench coat and a striped green turtleneck. With both girls wearing blue, but retaining their individual style philosophies, it's a great way of showing the audience that they can finally be themselves together. At their parents' second wedding, both Hallie and Annie wear white, and although it isn't expressly said which sister is which, based on what they've worn earlier on in the film, we can make an educated guess. So kudos to the costume designer on that one. Each outfit is somewhat similar to what the girls wore the last time they were on a boat, so I'd bet that Annie is the one in the fit and flare dress, while Hallie is in the Chinese-inspired look. Hallie's long sleeves are actually just a shrug, and in the end credits we see her remove it. And as someone who has a lot of fun on the dance floor, I completely understand why she would have done that. While Hallie and Annie have some pretty obvious visual cues that differentiate them, the lines between Elizabeth and Meredith are a bit more blurred, with the two dressing eerily similar to one another, which is the point, as the film wants us to understand that Nick is effectively using Meredith to fill the Elizabeth-shaped hole in his heart. We meet Elizabeth the same moment Hallie does, and she's immediately presented as the ideal woman and mother. She's kind, creative, and loving, in addition to being a total knockout. Everything about her is elegant, but in a really natural and effortless way that only comes with knowing exactly who you are. Her tank dress is a beautiful cream color that isn't too form-fitting or short, and you could generally picture her lounging around the house like that. Even when they head outside, she doesn't seem to be trying too hard, and with her flowy coat and neutral colors, there's something very inviting about her. Natasha Richardson passed away in a freak skiing accident in 2009, and her kids actually rewatch The Parent Trap whenever they miss her because the character was so similar to who she was in real life, which is just so beautiful. One of the most beloved pop culture figures at the time was Princess Diana, and Elizabeth seems to take significant inspiration from her. Besides the obvious hair comparisons, Diana also had a penchant for blazers, neutral colors, and tank dresses, and even her more casual moments look like what Elizabeth wore when she was in California. I mean, the two even use the same bamboo-handled Gucci bag. Principal photography for The Parent Trap began in London in July 1997, and a mere month later, Princess Diana would pass in a car crash, and I wonder if the frenzy surrounding her death influenced the film to be more overt in the similarities between the two women. It's probably just coincidental, but Elizabeth's style also reminds me a bit of Meg Ryan, who at the time was actually married to Dennis Quaid. So wouldn't it have been funny if she were on the mood board? It's also interesting how big a difference hair and clothing can make, because for the longest time, I didn't even realize Natasha Richardson was also in Maid in Manhattan. Meredith is introduced in a completely different way than Elizabeth, first being shown to us behind a camera lens before being revealed under a big hat with sultry music. It's a classic femme fatale moment that makes it clear that she's as sexy as she is dangerous, and I still can't believe that they met, got engaged, and are planning a wedding in less than 2 months. What's the rush? Although Meredith's dress is all white, a rather pure and innocent color, there are a lot of black accents like her shoes and hat, making it obvious that she isn't as nice as she's pretending to be. There's some overlap with what Elizabeth was wearing, like the bateau neckline and tank sleeves, but Meredith's dress is less relaxed, hinting at how she's more high-strung and high-maintenance. Some people have said that Meredith dresses more new money than Elizabeth does, but I don't really agree. It's more so the difference between American and British style. Where Elizabeth takes notes from Princess Diana, Meredith seems more like a Carolyn Bessette Kennedy, Gwyneth Paltrow type. Still clean-cut and refined, but not quite as modest and with some youthful touches. There were other similarities between all of these women besides their style as well. In the case of Princess Diana, her divorce from Charles was a huge deal. And what sets the movie in motion? Nick and Elizabeth's divorce. Even though Gwyneth Paltrow and Carolyn Bessette Kennedy were both accomplished in their own fields, their romantic relationships drew a lot more attention. Although both characters are career women, their jobs have very different associations. With Elizabeth being a bridal designer, her career path is rooted in her femininity, not to mention, it's awfully romantic. Most importantly, we see that her job allows her to not only take care of her family, literally moving her father in to live with her, but still lets her spend time with her daughter. Whereas Meredith is a publicist, a field which at the time was still male-dominated, so she reads as a bit more aggressive and selfish. I actually go into further detail about the common tropes the film uses to demonize Meredith in another video on the channel, so you can check that out if you're interested.
I'm not the bad guy. You know, I'm just doing what I want to do. Who's laughing? I can't quite say that I'm the villain, but I know everybody else will think that.
Another thing that highlights their differences is their jewelry, with Elizabeth opting for daintier pieces with pearl accents, which appears more mature and timeless. Meanwhile, Meredith makes a much bigger statement, often wearing chunky gold earrings, rings, and bracelets. Even her watch is more blingy than Elizabeth's. It's a not-so-subtle way of signaling to the world that she's a gold digger. On rare occasions, we do see Meredith wear pearls, but in a single strand, which is more attention-grabbing. Elizabeth's pearls are white, symbolizing her role as the hero, while Meredith has black Tahitian pearls, a literal representation of her villainous behavior. Even their nails are a good indicator of their differing personalities. Obviously, both care about their appearance and have the time and means to regularly go to the salon. But Elizabeth opts for a classic French nail, which not only reads as more mature and clean-cut, but also hints at the fact that she literally speaks French. Meanwhile, Meredith opts for a bright red nail that matches her lipstick, adding a bright pop of color to all of her outfits, while also highlighting her confidence and sex appeal. While Hallie is in England, we see Elizabeth frequently wear cardigans, something that not only influences the direction of the twins' wardrobe, but also makes her appear kind and inviting. This is the case for her more formal outfits as well, which feature warm tones and soft fabrics, and she often appears as a literal ray of sunshine. The rare exception is when she and Nick go out to dinner, where she wears a short black dress picked out for her by Martin. One thing that I love about this outfit is how it calls back to her and Nick's wedding, with the dresses having the same neckline and shawl. That, combined with the setting, really makes it feel like they've traveled to the past. This cocktail dress honestly looks exactly like something Meredith would wear, as she prefers dark colors, short hemlines, sharp silhouettes, and interesting cutouts, all of which help accentuate her figure. Don't get me wrong, she looks great, but it's a more obvious sexuality. It isn't surprising that there's so much overlap between the two women's styles, especially when you consider the fact that Meredith literally wanted one of Elizabeth's designs for her own wedding dress, and it's clear that Nick has a very specific type. Honestly, my only teeny tiny complaint in an otherwise perfect movie is that I do wish we'd gotten a scene where Meredith is trying on wedding dresses, maybe with the twins and her mother, only because it would be fun to see what she'd choose compared to Elizabeth, and it'd also give the original evil stepmother from the first movie more than just a simple cameo. But if I had to guess, Meredith would probably go in a ball gown direction. She just feels like the type to want a perfect princess moment. While Elizabeth is staying at Nick's house, she adopts his country chic aesthetic, but it looks totally natural on her. But when Meredith wears Nick's clothing while camping, it looks completely out of place. And it's interesting how even in this moment, the color symbolism shows how at odds she and Nick are, with him in white and her in black. When she's initially forced into this outing, Meredith has on a full face, sunglasses, and a coordinated workout set. It's the kind of outfit you'd wear when you want to look athletic, but you actually aren't. And the stark white trim has since become one of the character's signature style motifs, and numerous brands have released similar outfits in recent years. I also love how they gave Meredith a Prada backpack, which was released in 1984, making it a far younger and hipper choice, much like Meredith herself. When she and Nick get remarried, Elizabeth wears what we can only assume is one of her own designs, and it makes perfect sense for it to be a little more minimalistic. While I personally prefer her first wedding dress, the second look's mesh sleeves were on trend at the time, and all things considered, it doesn't look terribly dated even 30 years later. What are your favorite outfits in The Parent Trap, and what movie should we take a look at next? Thanks again to ThredUp for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to use code MODERN50 for 50% off your first order. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye!